from the session would be like how the incident detection response strategy has evolved over the last year, some sort of detection and response technology, what different type of the XDR component, what is the effective XDR strategy implementation, and also some view on XDR as one of the central tool for the threat detection and hunting. Particularly for this session, we have an electric line of speaker deliberating on the XDR theme. I would like to welcome Mr. Rajesh Thapa, CISO, Axis Bank. Welcome, Mr. Rajesh.
Right.
Next, we have Mr. Pawan Chawla, CISO and DPO, Future Generally India Life Insurance. Welcome, Mr. Pawan. Next, we have Mr. Dhananjay Khanna, Senior Vice President, CISO at SBI Cards and Payment Service Limited. Welcome, Mr. Dhananjay.
Hi, good
Next, we
afternoon.
have Ms. Anga Majumdar, BFSI Hat Trend Micro India.
Thanks for having me here. Pleasure. Yeah.
Welcome, ma'am. And next, we have Mr. Avinash Prasad, VP and Business Head of Managed Security Service at Tata Communication Limited. Welcome, Mr.
Good
Avinash.
afternoon. Yeah, thank you, and
This
hi to all my fellow panelists and the audience.
and the session would be moderated by Mr. Rajesh. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon, my co-panelists here. So this session on XDR. So primarily, what we will try to cover as part of this session is we will try to list out what an XDR is all about and how does it form a fabric in the organizational uh, landscape of protection control. So what I meant here is primarily that over the years, what we have seen is the cost of breaches are going higher and higher. I mean, primarily in the last report, if that's to be trusted, is about 4 billion is the average cost of breach, and the time to detect and contain is again quite high. It's more than 8 months on an average. So these things are scary, to be honest, when we as CISOs or the boards or for anybody who is a practitioner there, if somebody tells that a malware or something was happening in the environment for so long, it's not even getting detected, it's a cause of concern. So more importantly, the action which drives all of us is to reduce this dwell time of these malwares, get better visibility on what's happening in your ecosystems, also challenge those set of evolving controls and tools and technologies which has been put in place over the year, and they were not wrong at that point of time, but are they sufficient and enough if we think of today's landscape? Are they servicing all what is required? Is the sim of maybe 5 years back is enough for us to give a visibility on everything? Is it centrally giving me the complete visibility on to take protective controls around my ecosystem? Maybe not. So the intent of our session today is to understand what this XDR is, and there are two full forms that I expand for it. Is one is the one which is globally known as the extended detection and response, but I also see it as a cross-layer detection and response, because over the years we have actually created layers of defense. But are those layers talking to each other? Do we have one place wherein these are correlated in a significantly good manner and giving us a meaningful result so that we can take those actions in appropriate time frame? So these two both are addressed very, very aptly as part of an XDR deployments in organizations. And we have, as part of this panel, two senior cyber professionals, or in the practitioner side, the CISOs of Future Generally and Future SBI Cards, and we have OEM, which actually creates an XDR platforms, and we have managed security services partner or an implementation partner through Tata Communications. So I think this panel will actually deliberate and maybe come up with what are the challenges, why we are going with this path, and what is the next steps that the organization should take care of. So let me start with you, Mr. Pawan. So how have you seen the incident response strategies evolving in the organizations over the years, and how has the protection controls which has been deployed over the period of time are seen as probably inhibitions in the overall protection theme, considering the new threats and the new expectations and the new digitization that's happening all around?
Thanks, Rajesh and DSCI for giving an opportunity to be part of this very interesting discussion because, as you correctly mentioned, the cost of a reported vulnerability or cost of a threat has gone up to 4 million. You talked about similarly the threat actors and threat which are getting pushed into an organization and evolved over a period of time. The way it has been evolved, let's look at it, let's go a year back and look at the shift which had happened. So from perimeter security, which used to be within the organization, has changed to this one particular machine which has been given to a user to do their day-to-day tasks. The perimeter shift had happened, and similarly the threats, the way they have been evolved, cannot be detected because most of the people are not even there in the office now. They are sitting at their home, they are working from their personal laptops or machine. The data is which the organization has gone out. It is very important to know the way machine is behaving and what user is doing within their machine. And with traditional antivirus, it is definitely not possible because they are signature based. The methodology of detecting a threat is, I mean, this is my interpretation. Please take it that way. That it is very old methodological, because until and unless if there is a signature, you can detect it and protect it. But the way threat actors have evolved over a period of time, it has become more realistic, and you may not come to know until and unless they become active within your machine to and do certain action. Like you correctly mentioned, one of the reports talk about that it takes around 270 days to detect, or approximately 8 months to detect a particular threat. Now, obviously, you can't wait till 2 months for a long till that period, till the exploit takes an action, and then you realize that you have been breached. You need some mechanism to understand the behavior of a particular machine, the what and most importantly the actions which user is taking. And that's where the EDR and XDR comes into the picture. When I say, I mean, these two terminologies are sometimes little confusing. It took me also some time to understand the differentiation between an EDR and an XDR. So endpoint detection and response is definitely required to understand what is happening in a particular machine and how user is behaving and taking an action while clicking, while browsing a website, while taking saving a file, what action has been taken. And similarly, I mean, once a user is taking an action, there are certain logs which are getting generated. It has to go somewhere and give you a one single dashboard which gives you an analysis of what is happening across the organization. It's not only one desktop which we are talking about. We are talking about hundreds or thousands of desktops which are there in the organization, desktops and desktop, and you need one single dashboard view. I call it XDR as a SIEM of your endpoints, because it gives you one single view, and do the analysis, tells you where what is happening. And that's the kind of evolution we are talking about today. Like we used to look at one single view through SOC of all your network devices server. It is very important today, the way threat actors has evolved, to get a view of what users are doing on their machine to take proactive action to keep your organization safe.
Perfect, perfect. Good insights. Thanks, Pawan. So, just continuing with that statement of Pawan on the stack, the perimeter, and the technologies that have been put in place are probably not adequate for today's threats. So, Mr. Dhananjay, how do you feel the recommended, and what, according to you, should be the recommended stack of both the technical and administrative controls that one has to organization should consider to put in place to actually overcome this delayed detection syndrome? I mean, it's actually a nightmare for all of us and it's very difficult to defend that. But how do you think, and what should be the ideal mix of the technical and administrative controls that an organization should put in place for overcoming them?
Sure, Rajesh. Thank you very much. And I think it's an interesting question. But I think before we get into what is required, I think it's important to kind of first look at what delayed detection syndrome is and why it happens actually. What are those key reasons why this thing happens in the industry, and what we see, we most of us see is actually. So I think as you and Pawan both mentioned, actually there is always, we find delays in the detection of incidents or those bad things happening in our environment, and it goes from weeks to months, and the average is 8 months, but it sometimes it goes for years actually together, and it takes very long time to detect. And actually that's the delayed detection syndrome is all about. And I think the secondly why it happens, I think one of the key reasons in my opinion is the alert fatigue, or the kind of the large numbers of alerts which comes, and humanly it's not possible to look at all those alerts actually, and it's like looking at a needle in a haystack kind of a thing, because that one alert which is of interest that gets lost in a huge amount of alerts which you are getting. One, the other, lately we are actually getting into proactive threat hunting than detective kind of a reactive approach which we used to have couple of years back. I think they are even for protective, I would say, proactive threat hunting, the number of alerts or the number of events is even much higher actually, because everybody is making the legitimate attempts actually. They are doing, what they are doing is a legitimate way of doing things actually, and looking for anomalies in that is even more difficult in my opinion, as compared to the traditional incident management. So these are few of the reasons why this kind of a syndrome is there actually, where it takes so long, why it takes so long to detect. And in my opinion, anything which helps to detect or to kind of analyze these alerts or these incidents quickly actually, so whether it's EDR, XDR, MDR, NDR, so anything which is like ML based, machine learning, any kind of a algorithm, any kind of bots, whatever can help analyze these alerts or these events quickly and come up with those, detect those anomalies, would be something which will help us avoid these kind of delayed detection syndrome actually.
Perfect. Thank you, Dhananjay. So next question, Anaga. I mean, primarily Trend Micro has been one of those OEMs which has actually been there providing solutions to the industry at large. Over the years, they have evolved the various protection and detection technologies, maybe starting with antivirus and all, coming to the next gen solutions in cloud and all. So how have you seen these detection aspects getting covered as part of your solutions over the years? And with specifically to this XDR, how do you think the XDR components can help reduce this cost of breach or maybe the average time to dwell?
Sure. So, Rajesh, if you've seen platforms being used until the advent of XDR, were never designed for detection and responses. They were merely general purpose event logging tools which practitioners used, adapted to it, and then that was primarily because of security purposes. Now, as the need grew, we saw that the security teams built on it, augmented it, and while they were doing it, the happy realization was that it's a costly proposition. The security teams are understaffed, they are small, and then they lack the overall experience and skill set when it comes to DevOps or software engineering. Now, while all this is happening or we grapple with, there are other factors that come into play. Like over the years, what we've seen is data volumes have gone exponentially high. With adoption of new age technologies, businesses going the cloud way, an enormous amount of data churning on a daily basis, structured, unstructured, big data platforms getting leveraged. The other factor to it is the entire perimeter has gone off premise, right? So again, SaaS coming into play, digital initiatives by organizations, cloud-born businesses are leveraging cloud like never before. We expect SaaS revenue to generate about $157 billion in 2022. So by the end of next year, that's the volume of growth that we see. Again, it becomes very easy because it's scalable, it provides economies of scale, it's easy to deploy, whatnot. This is happening parallelly with the need where the industry is pivoting from looking at not analysts but engineers. So when teams are going to operate at scale, they're going to require engineers and coders to write codes to ensure that the entire automation in terms of detection and response is embedded as a part of the platform, right? So these again are going to open up a Pandora box in terms of issues around visibility, blind spots, lack of insights and control, which is where a platform like XDR comes into play. Right? So Trend Micro has its own vision and platform, which essentially is an enterprise-wise, platform that delivers insights, control, and visibility across endpoints, email, servers, network, and even mobile today. So this is one way to orchestrate all your security solutions in terms of getting actionable intelligence, ensuring that there are early signs of detection, there is remediation in time, and then response and recovery at the same time. So I think XDR is going to be the way forward. Of course, it is going to require being open to third party. With open API being talked about a lot, that's going to be a key driver. Services is going to envelope the entire platform offering. So I think XDR is going to be very, very useful in terms of ensuring that there is enterprise-wide visibility and understanding of the risk profile by organizations.
Yeah. Two key words which I picked from what Anurag was saying was one is visibility and other is risk profiling and environment. What do you in the echo?
Sorry, Rajesh, there's some echo here.
Yeah, I think
I think it's better now. Let's go for it. Yeah.
another three on mute. Hello. Avinash, can you hear me?
Yes, you're
Yeah,
audible.
okay. Yeah, fair. So Avinash, in your interaction as a managed service provider and an implementation partner for various some of these technologies, how have you seen the clients accept the the promises made by XDR per se? What's our expectations that you've seen from? And do you feel that this is something which is going to be a silver bullet? And with the context I am coming from is that every technology when it comes out for next few years, it actually is a hype. So is it actually a hype or is it actually something which is realistic and is going to transform the is one of those things which will remain and is actually going to be helpful for the entire industry for long?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Rajesh, and I'll do my honest best to keep it succinct and to the point. So I think the first thing, as you said, the hype associated with certain things is a given, right? New technology does bring in some hype. In this case, I do see a lot of anticipation and enthusiasm as well from the customer standpoint. The reason being that we have seen a build-up of the need for better capability coming out of the SOC. Even the title of our panel here, really puts it well. It's about consolidating, integrating, automating, and yet simplifying, right? So you need to take the complexity out of it as far as possible. So what that meant was, the gaps that were pointed out with respect to why the SOC failed in a certain instance would be the use cases were not right. We didn't know what log sources to go after. We couldn't understand the richness of what was needed. Where's my AI/ML in the SOC and all of that, right? So all these things and topics have been discussed. At the same time, the realization that focusing on KPIs around detection and response is more and more important, and we spoke about that. You shared some data points of where the lag is still there in some of those capabilities has been building up, and therefore how an solutions partner and an MSS partner like Tata Comm can connect the benefit of some of these technologies to the business outcome of delivering the right kind of detection, response, and remediation capability has been building up for sure. If we tie this to the reality of the enterprise architecture and the deployment that is happening today and the much talked about workplace of the future, right? And with just so much which is going to happen on the open internet and on the cloud, and the way the all entities, devices, connections, applications, and workloads are going to be there, right? What it clearly tells us is that the amount of signaling that we could possibly consume is really going to increase manifold. Now, how do you make sense of it? And again, tying back to this consolidating, simplifying, automating, it becomes a very, very important goal. So definitely, tying to the business outcome, being able to manage what is evolving and becoming a more difficult environment to keep your arms around means that, it needs to be certain capabilities need to come in play, which gives higher levels of confidence without suppressing critical signals also. just in order to manage the noise. If you're going to suppress critical signals, you will never pick out the that signal which was most important. So we believe that XDR has an important role to play in that sense, in terms of being able to evolve the function and use the key capabilities, whether it be from EDR. A lot can be derived from network threat analytics also, because of what we see, let's say, on the network, it being pretty much the first layer of defense, the way we see it. So yes, we see a lot of anticipation and enthusiasm around this. Uh, the performance, the proof is in the pudding. So the KPIs, the way we are able to actually bring down what you said, right? Detection, response, right? How we are able to bring it down, shrink it, and bring better visibility is what will tell us, how the hype is being now being actually met by real performance. That's what I would say.
Yeah, yeah. Perfect. Thanks, Avinash. So, Dhananjay, back to you. Say, and what Avinash was mentioning is around the enterprise architectures. So, the role of XDR becomes more meaningful. Uh, and 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 in my initial talk, I was mentioning on how the earlier SIMs are may not be adequate for that. So, how do you see in a hybrid architecture where some of the things are on-prem, some on cloud, some on SaaS, and probably just spread across with open internet, that is open APIs and all that stuff, which actually exposes out the perimeters all gone. I mean, the enterprises are without boundaries. How does this particular tool in particular is going to supplement or replace the existing central socks which were existent for so long? And other thing is, with having said this, while the subject of our panel discussion ends up with simplifying, but it looks little complicated, it looks complex if you have to think of so many technologies to be incorporated and made to integrate with an XDR for making it more effective. Will this complexity also lead to CISOs taking probably a step back and probably be more concerned, or is there something which how do you see that particular complexity in the entire game?
Sure, Rajesh. I think again, interesting topic actually, and let me try and summarize it briefly. So, absolutely, I think as we all have talked about, and the fellow panelists also, that the boundaries have gone, and this in this hybrid environment, I think we all are trying to look at XDR as a silver bullet kind of a thing, though. I think it's for me it's early days as actually it's just a start actually. I think lot has to happen in this area. If you ask me, I would like to see XDR in the future, which is like uh, it replaces the SIM and the SOAR actually. So the source should go, the sim should go, and both of these things should happen through XDR. But to reach there, I think there is, I think a long way ahead actually. XDRs have to be more inclusive. Lot of out of the box integrations. Right now, there are too much of customization or even supporting heterogeneous environments is right now a concern for some of us actually, which are operating in a very hybrid heterogeneous environment. So I think that's something which we need to look at. Complex right now, complexities are absolutely there because out of box integrations are very limited to one. Either the OEM says we support only our products, or maybe a extended ecosystem only. Those open APIs we are still talk about, but we have not seen many actually where it's very openly you can integrate your traditional application devices. The other area of improvement in my opinion are the application integrations actually, because still XDR we consider it to be a net. We talk about getting the log ingestion from the servers, from antivirus, and most of it, network and infrastructure actually, and security devices. We still are not talking about integrating the application logs, wherein the data or the real data or the real threat lies in the application, because application hold everything actually. So that's the another core actually. So I think it's a long way to go, but absolutely a very promising technology. uh, Certainly can I'm expecting it to kind of in near future to kind of replace. We should start thinking replacing at least the SIM, and at least not going investing more on SOAR kind of technologies, because again the orchestration it gives what SOAR is expected to give actually. So I think a replacement of SOAR and SIM should be the way forward for XDR.
Perfect. Okay, thanks, Ranjay. And before I come to Pawan, I would like to have a quick rebut from, not a rebut, but just the input from Anaga on the expectation which Dhananjay had put in for from an XDR perspective. While I would have parked this question later, but I thought this is the context is there, and Dhananjay has put in some aspirations for what he wants to look at. How do you think new product, I mean, per se, and at large and XDR products? Maybe we take a bite from Avinash as well on this. So how do you see that getting addressed? What Dhananjay is putting as an expectation?
Sure. So to be very honest, Rajesh, XDR is an evolving space. It will continue to grow. What started as EDR in its nascency is now, being extrapolated and extended to enterprise-wide visibility, which is where we are looking at multi-vector detection and response. Now, it will work as a replacement for certain technologies depending on the appetite and scale of certain organizations. But for large ones which have already invested, made those large investments and captive establishments, this will be an added layer. This will be a complementing layer, right? Again, there are fundamental differences between the technologies that we're talking about. And today we are really not talking about ripping and replacing anything. XDRs, when we say there are two kinds, there are open and there are native. Like for example, Trend Micro XDR is native in nature, but at the same time, no matter what your flavor of the offering is, it will have to be open in its platform. So third-party integration, as Ananja pointed out, people are talking about it, but is it really contribution? I think it's going to be a journey that organizations will need to take, right? We may start with a bunch of out of the box integration services, but that's going to evolve, right? So the answer will be that yes, XDR is going to be the way forward. It will evolve into a lot of things. It is going to look at security analytics. In a lot of cases, it may be a replacement. In a lot of cases, it will be complementing or supplementing technologies. So similarly for trend mining, right? What we offer in our portfolio or the platform Vision One is essentially just this, that whatever is getting spread out right now, disparate technologies, siloed technologies, not being able to talk to each other, can we orchestrate them in a way which will help automate a lot of processes, make sense out of those logs or data, and give you actionable intelligence at the same time risk profile? But the story will not end there. We have to do much more. Can it be managed service? Something which Avinash can talk much more in detail. But can it be managed offering? Can it be services based? So I think these are going to be the considerations, but XDR is going to be for a while.
Okay, appreciate that. So Avinash, any bullet from you from for
Yeah, I'll
what?
make a very quick couple of points on this. Number one is that the customers are pretty much in their mind already at SIM plus plus, if I can call it that. Nobody wants to be sitting on just a SIM platform for sure. And we got blindsided by a variety of attacks that are happening. And definitely, as an MSSP, we see that we can't offer the customer the option of that painful surgery of ripping and replacing everything, either number one, or tying them to one stack. So definitely, how to find the right integrations between the technology architecture is something. It's kind of a daily issue that we have to working closely with both our partners as well as on the customer side. Another thing which is making it more interesting, Rajesh, as you would agree, is the way players are changing hands in the security ecosystem, right? And the way different organizations and OEMs have ended up, in each other's houses. So that is not going to change. So that also is something which will have a role to play, and that means that additional integrations get built, etc. Also, so keep it simple is what we look at. Definitely, customers are probably are at SIM plus plus and are looking at expanding up from there. They are looking at the right robust processes also around this. Just deploying this solution, etc., will not work. At the same time, with some amount of investment protection and avoiding vendor lock-in. So we just have to do a balancing act amongst all of this.
Yeah, perfect, good. So just being with you, Avinash, I think maybe the follow-up question that I had is, with your interactions with your customers, what according to you have been their key, maybe a few of them, bullets or items which are a part of their success criteria of let's take it forward. Say even when somebody does a POC or somebody does take it forward, there are minimal success criteria that are there in mind. So as part of your interactions, what sort of success criteria have you come across your set of clients or your interactions with various potential clients, which can be maybe meaningful for the entire audience?
Right. We are clearly seeing a step up, both in terms of the expectations around the SLA, right? Because the customers are worried about even those, those one, two, or three incidents which can create a big challenge in the environment. So we are looking at, situations where the customers want to test and prove out solutions that really help step up, especially around the high priority, high severity incidents. What is the level of detection and response, and definitely automation that that can be facilitated through technology automation. There, the appetite cannot be even for 10 minutes. That you'll tell me what's going on, and then you'll come back and tell me after 1 hour, and all of that also. So definitely, that level of measurable improvement is something that we are looking at, which cannot be done by the human factor. There has to be automation that needs to get tied into that. So that's point number one. Much better orchestration between the TI input that is coming in and threat hunting also, which is the outward looking activity that needs to be going on in terms of what is potentially going to be impacting our organization, also is part of this whole larger solution. Those can't be kept outside of this. So these are some of the measurable outcomes that customers are looking at. And we last 2-3 days we have been in a tizzy over the log4j vulnerability, etc. also. So how do you really bring all of these capabilities to that level, cutting edge of response, where you are able to quickly assimilate and contextualize the situation and take it forward with a step up in SLA. Those are some of the things we are clearly seeing, Rajesh.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Avinash. So, Pawan, over to you. So maybe what we heard and largely is that there is some materiality in XDR solving a lot of our problems. Okay, but practically, I mean, if we CISOs discuss it, we always have cost factor, because cost of control is something which keeps coming up, and we discuss internally with our management, our leadership, and all that stuff, right? So having been there in the role, what you have been, you would have seen, you would have actually been defending some of those investments that you would have made over the years, especially on these protection controls. And now with XDR layer coming in, it may supplement some of those investments. It may replace some of those investments. So how do you see that being tackled? And primarily you being one of those guys, it's a problem for every CISO, to be honest, in the country and globally rather. So how do you see this particular XDR leg to actually fit into that particular scheme of the budgeting and the cost controls that normally are typically there?
So, Rajesh, at this point of time, if you look at it, if you are replacing a traditional antivirus and then putting EDR, XDR on in place of a traditional antivirus, there is not much of a cost difference. So there would not be any challenge in replacing the product, but the challenge is somewhere else. The challenge is, Avinash talked about, the challenges with SOC. It took some time to evolve, and similarly, XDRIC will take some time. It has to be supported by the MDR as well, which is the managed detection and response. Without managed detection and response, XDR does not play a pure pledge role, because the alerts which are getting generated, somebody has to take an action, and that's where uh, the uh, the intelligence needs to be brought in. So now, if I come to the problem of a CISO, the problem of CISO is not the investment, it's the action which a CISO needs to take once the alerts are getting generated. And that's where I would seek and request Anand and Avinash to come up with a solution in that aspect, that how these problems can be resolved. Because when you get a alert or get an incident reported by a particular technology, there has to be intelligence built in the system itself, which reduces the manpower. Ultimately, you do not want to put as a burden on IT, because remember, IT is the first line of defense, right? They have to take an action on each and every incident which are getting reported. Now, whether it gets reported through an XDR or an SOC, each and every incident which are getting reported need to be acted upon. And until and unless there is an AN and ML technology which is supporting and backing a particular action, it will become a burden on IT rather than making their life easy. So it will become a burden rather than making rather than a solution to an IT professional. That's where I think the intelligence needs to go in. A solution need to be brought onto the table, w- and it will be helpful for an CISO to prove an ROI to the management as well, that how it is helping. One, security is definitely an aspect, because it is no more a question, and today management is well much aware of it, that they need to invest in security, otherwise nobody is going to survive. I mean, that's no more a discussion where you have to convince management separately that they need to invest in technology to secure the organization. The management is the importance is the ROI which of the investment, and how it is going to complement what IT is doing. You need to reduce the burden on IT rather than increasing the burden on IT, and that's what would be my take to this question, Rajesh.
Fair, fair. So another maybe a pointed question from Pawan was, how does it supplement? And there's a question I see from the audience as well, which actually maps it very similar line. How does this XDR and MDR either function with each other, or MDR is one of the components within XDR? Maybe can you throw some light on, which addresses his concern as well as Girish's concern, who is part of the audience?
Sure, sure. I think it's a very valid question, Rajesh, which often gets discussed when enterprises are looking at, are we buying product, are we buying services, do we need both, right? So like Pavan rightly pointed out, that just providing a solution is not enough. You will have to operationalize it, support it, and sustain it. So XDR, yes, it's a platform. Now, in order to operationalize it and realize its efficacy, you will have to deliver intelligence services. So whether it be threat hunting, threat sweeping, timely audits, so on and so forth. I think that's again can be a separate service from the OEM, something that we can do, or we can also help as OEMs or MSSPs. Look at delivering a managed XDR. We manage the entire for enterprises. Offload it completely. Again, to Girish's and Pavan's point, uh, the idea is to reduce the security tax, to reduce the alert fatigue of security teams, and business focus is where the energies need to lie. So you are literally reducing this because there are analysts who know the job, who can code, who can write, understand languages, who can write those scripts and operationalize it. So yes, XDR and managed XDR, so people can, enterprises can go for managed XDR as a service. You don't need to invest in these solutions, or there are enterprises who can just invest in XDR and yet go for managed services. There are partners like TCL who can provide those services. There are OEMs such as us who also provide these services, threat analyst services, research services, whatnot. So I think there are options available for both set of requirements, and both can be very well addressed.
Okay, fair. So just maybe a question from my side was that primarily is this is a SaaS service, right? So as part of SaaS service, some of those would be predominantly part of those automations, orchestrations that are already built in, right? So how do you differentiate between what needs to be kept within the SaaS offering and what needs to be done as part of a managed services?
You want me to answer or Avinash?
Yeah, maybe you brought it up, so maybe Avinash can maybe supplement it. But since you brought this up and you understand the platform better than any one of us, so I thought I'll probably,
Yeah,
how
yeah.
does that
Happy
offering?
to take this one. Yes, yes. So here's the deal. Platform, to be very honest, these are complex ecosystems, right? One will need trained. So, like I said in my earlier point, the entire requirement change has happened from requiring analysts to engineers. So no more are L and L2 going to be enough. So you will need these services now. If an organization is well on its maturity curve to have those engineers and threat analysts that they can invest in, then probably that's something that can be done in house. But for majority of the organization, that's really not an option. It's an expensive proposition and difficult to manage, which is where you can set or offload these services to the experts. It could be OEMs, like I said, or it could be service providers who can render these services. Again, same for the platform itself. A service provider can manage it for you entirely, and just ensure that the entire orchestration at your end is that of ensuring that the risk profile is always in check. It is dashboards and reports where action is already taken, or you're already alerted on what's happening. So it would make sense, depending on the scale and size of the organization and their appetite to invest in these technologies. How much can they chew? How much can they chew on their own, rather? They can have the platform, offer the intelligence services. They can do both. Like I said, both are available. It's a function of where the organization is in its maturity curve, and where does it stay in terms of its appetite to spend on security.
Yeah, thanks. So Avinash, maybe a penultimate question, and we have 4 minutes there to end our panel discussion. Avinash, I just want to understand on the MITRE framework or the kill chain frameworks, which primarily has been there for the entire from detection perspective, response perspective, more from a detection perspective. So you need to break these kill chains. So how does XDR, where does it fit in that entire framework? How does it help in organizations in mitigating those risks related to some of that?
Yeah, no, if you look at the operationalization of something which is fairly new, and where the service KPIs and metrics are still evolving, like XDR, I think MITRE, in my view, has been a boon in that sense. Firstly, it's evolving. It takes into account the newer attack patterns, and what is being seen out there, so that there is the capability to add those kind of techniques also back into how the SOC team and the security analysts need to operate. Secondly, we saw that in the broader sense, managed security services sense, there was a separation between the operations activities, which is device management, policy management, some of those activities, vis-a-vis specialized threat detection and response. We started seeing this separation. Now, again, as Anaga said, right, customer appetite could be different. They might want soup to nuts, everything under one roof, or they might want horses for courses. So specialists doing the threat detection response on one side, device management operations on the other side. But to bring that level of sharpness towards the threat detection and response, given that there are certain tools which are available, but in terms of tying it better to the context of, for example, here we've got CISOs from financial services industry, we've got from ITITS industry, right? But the context will not be exactly be the same. The customers that they are serving are also not the same. So how do we tie it to the industry context is something that we saw clearly coming up as another thing, where MITRE was a great enabler. As I said, it helps the evolution also, because nobody wants to see a static position of the SOC. It has to keep evolving in line with the times. So that's the other thing that we saw, and we believe that as in terms of one of the key supporting models for an enhanced operating framework, this is something that really helps us onboard even younger and younger SOC analysts who can help understand these principles faster and start applying some of those things, in terms of just looking at dumbly like hash values, and okay, I'll just put something in some watch list to, doing better analysis. So indeed, we are actually using all of this seriously, and it's very important to have
Excellent.
frameworks like
Excellent.
this.
Excellent. And last 1.5 minutes, and I would ask my peer CISOs to maybe bring up one point which they feel is a non-negotiable ask for them to consider XDRs from either from an implementation perspective or from a solution perspective. What do you want to see in an XDR in their roadmap, which can be considered or which is not there?
I would say no, it's not there. I think it's already there. But I think one thing which I really want to second is getting XDR as a managed service and getting the end-to-end threat hunting done by the OEM or by the expert SI. I think it's absolutely must with the XDR. Taking it in house, just taking the tool and doing it in house may not be able to get the benefit actually at all. Actually, then it might you end up might be having just a advanced antivirus, which I don't think any of us are looking for.
Thanks, Dhananjay. Anything, Pawan, from you?
Uh, Rajesh, I already covered
MDR.
in the previous question. What I am looking at is a comprehensive service rather than just a product,
Correct.
because I am the consumer of EDR. So let me be honest here, and that's the pain area which is there, and that need to be resolved either through technology with the implementation or amalgamation of AI or ML, or come as a service. So when you sell something, don't sell only the product, just sell as a combination, because SIM does not get is not able to resolve anybody's problem. There has to be SOC service which needs to be bought along with it, and that's where people have gained understanding over a period of time. I think with XDR as well, it is going to be the similar case. It will take some time evolve, but the more you tell, the more you give knowledge to the consumer or end user like CISOs like us, it will be better.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think it's clearly communicated to Anaga and Avinash as well, your expectations. And as part of their discussion, they did bounce off and did mention on what their roadmaps are. So maybe 30 seconds for me to summarize some of those aspects of which we just discussed. It was a great, interesting discussion. I think there were valuable inputs for me. I mean, I definitely believe for the audience, there were definitely some takeaways from this particular session. One is definitely for XDRs, which gives us a visibility across the layers. I mean, it does help you across application, networks, net infrastructure, and cloud as well. The workloads, so central view of everything that's happening there gives you a better visibility that cut down your dwell time or time to detect. It also has analytics and intelligence engine, which actually helps you in threat hunting and all that, which is good from a central point perspective. Is an alternate to the pointed solutions which we have been lying. This actually facilitates the integrated security view, which normally will help get over that point to point security mitigations that we were done all this while. And one other thing which also it supplements, it gives you a multi-layer correlation. I mean, it's not a correlation of one technology or one tool. It gives you multi-layer, which may be so it gives you a great visibility. Then yes, there are action plan. This is a roadmap. This is a journey which all of us would be taking along with the OEMs and the solution partners. But just to conclude, I think this is potentially a good solution. Good XDR is the tool which would be required for organization to get better and better as far as the detection responses are gone. So wonderful. Thank you so much, my co-panelists, Avinash, Anaga, Dhananjay, and Pawan. Thank you so much. And thanks, Ishan, for inviting us here as part of this panel.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks a lot to
Thank
each and
you.
every panelist for joining and sharing a lot of great insight. Thanks a lot. Looking forward for the future event as well. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye, guys.